Good evening. Today you made your voices heard, and we took our first step towards changing the future of our state and our democracy. A future filled with hope and opportunity, where affordable, quality health care is real, where workers earn a livable wage, where our rural towns are a priority, not an afterthought. A future where our kids get a quality public education, whether you live in Newkirk, North Tulsa, or Northwest Oklahoma City. A future that includes more jobs, incentives for entrepreneurs, and a response to an ongoing public health crisis that takes the lead from science and healthcare professionals, not politicians who are only looking out for themselves. I believe in this future for our state and our country. Every generation is asked to step up and lead, and that's why I'm here. Tonight, I'm proud to accept the nomination for the United States Senate. I'd like to thank those who have worked so hard to get us here tonight and who are working as I speak to get us across the finish line in November. To the voters who learned to use mail-in ballots for the first time, and those who had to risk their health to have their most basic privilege of voting be counted, thank you. Democracy will not be silenced, and I will honor your faith in me by working hard and getting things done for you. To my campaign staff, my dear friends, and to my incredible family, thank you. You learn a lot about a place by reporting its news. Every day you see joy, grief, triumph, and tragedy. Mostly here in Oklahoma, you see courage, grit, and decency, and a relentless belief in the American spirit. It's what we call the Oklahoma Standard. For the past decade, I've had the privilege of telling the stories of my fellow Oklahomans as a news anchor and reporter. I reported on everything from tornadoes to uncovering corruption at our state capitol. I've seen firsthand what moves Oklahomans and what worries them. Tonight, here's what I can report. Oklahomans are sick and tired of the chaos they see with their elected officials. Gridlock, partisan games, and ugliness dominate our politics. Meanwhile, Oklahomans face constant struggles, paying the mortgage, health care, education for their kids. College? For many, that's just a hill too steep to climb. How can families think about saving for college? I know that many of you are making a 30-day supply of your prescription drugs stretch for 60 days because costs are out of control. How do partisan games in Washington help Oklahomans facing these hardships? They don't. And now COVID-19 has upended our lives, closed businesses, shut down our schools, devastated families, and cruelly exposed the gaps in our healthcare system. This is chaos, a moment made more infuriating by the fact that it didn't have to happen. This January, the only senator many of us have ever known, Jim Inhofe, knew how bad this virus was going to be. The entire U.S. Senate was briefed on it. They knew the shocking death toll likely to result and the economic tailspin we'd face. What did Jim do about it? He didn't say a word. Instead, he kept quiet and sold off $450,000 in stock before the markets tanked. He clearly doesn't care about your job or your health. He cares about the health of his bank account. My friends, that is not the Oklahoma standard. Inhofe chose greed over goodness. Since the 1960s, we've paid Jim Inhofe's way, here at home and in D.C. Oklahoma taxpayers provide him with the finest health care plan on earth, even as he continually voted to take our health care away. At the very least, he owed us the truth about this deadly virus, but he failed us. Jim Inhofe knew this respiratory killer would first go after our parents and grandparents, and instead of being truthful, he mocked it. A reporter asked him what precautions he was taking for the coronavirus. He said, "None. Want to shake hands?" That's not being honest. That's thinking we're all naive and fools. Part of the Oklahoma standard is that we tell the truth and we take things seriously. It goes along with the grit and hard work that define the people of our great state. I grew up in Bethany. Like so many of you, nothing was handed to me. I put myself through law school at night and spent a decade as a journalist, exposing corruption, holding political leaders accountable, and giving Oklahomans a voice. We ran stories for years on the mold and asbestos inside housing at Tinker Air Force Base. It was an insult to those who put their lives on the line to protect us. No one was protecting them. Families were moving into RVs because the mold was so bad. When they called our senator asking for help, what did they get? No response. Senator Inhofe finally showed up when it became a news story. I watched him tell these families how nice their housing was, and if it was this nice when he was in the Army, he might have stayed longer. My heart sank. Then I got angry. How much longer do we have to take it from this guy? That was the moment I decided to run for the Senate, and within weeks I stepped off the sidelines and we launched our campaign. Now, having campaigned in every corner of our great state, both in person and virtually, I've seen things that Jim Inhofe surely cannot see from his home in Washington, D.C. I met a family from my church with 2 little girls under the age of 10, Sadie and Ella. They both have pre-existing conditions, like 1 in 3 Oklahomans. Is Jim Inhofe thinking of Sadie and Ella when he votes to strip away health insurance? In this time of crisis up and down our state, I've seen the Oklahoma spirit of community, neighbors helping neighbors at its best. People working for free to keep clinics and hospitals open because Oklahomans need the care. But Jim Inhofe isn't lending a hand in the spirit of community. He's working against us. No elected official should be comfortable in D.C. I will be transparent. I will publish my daily schedule online so you'll know exactly who I'm meeting with, and I'll return to Oklahoma every single quarter for town halls. I'll listen to you, and I'll share my thinking with you on the issues we are facing, whether you voted for me or not. You'll hear exactly what is going on in Washington, good and bad, without political bias, because that's what Oklahomans deserve from their senator. The other day I got a message from a woman. She's a registered Republican. She's excited to cast her vote for me in November. I'm not sure what won her over, COVID, the economy. Maybe it was the idea of electing a woman to the U.S. Senate for the first time in Oklahoma's history. Or maybe she knows, like we all know, this will be the most important election of our lifetimes. Our democracy is at risk. Our health is at risk. Our lives are at risk. Solving the challenges we face will require leadership. Leaders who will roll up their sleeves and work across the aisle to find solutions for all Oklahomans, not the big donors and corporations in Washington, but all of us. Leaders who will stand up and call out injustice when we see it. Leaders with new vision and new ideas for a state hungry for change. It's long overdue that we end the notion of the career politician. No one person should be in continual office since LBJ was president. Jim Inhofe has had the opportunity for over 5 decades to make things better, but time and again he chose partisanship, party, and chaos over principle, state, and country. Recently, as reported, the Russian government has been paying bounties to the Taliban for killing American soldiers in Afghanistan. There is no explanation and no excuse for Jim Inhofe to have waited days before even saying a word. And while he touts his chairmanship of the Senate Armed Services Committee, we all know if this were a president with a D beside their name, he would have been all over it, because politics come first with Jim. Instead, he sits quietly, and no one expects a tough and fair investigation. It's unbelievable. Whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent, none of that matters anymore. I pledge to you that I'll be the senator who cares more about what is right versus wrong. No more red versus blue. It's time we bring our country back together. My opponent created this chaos coming out of Washington, and he's counting on your complacency. He's expecting you to turn a blind eye to his corruption and punch his ticket for another 6 years in D.C. We can do better. I will work harder. I will work for you, and I will get things done for Oklahoma. Thank you. May God bless you and continue to bless the great state of Oklahoma and the United States of America. Good night.